Hello there, Star Wars fans, and welcome to Custom Figures with myself, Bobby Robertson, and Nick Napoli here.
Yes, and I want to say this is the first substantive panel of Rebel Scum Con.
Yep. So, welcome to our first workshop panel, as we call it. I mean, you guys aren't really going to be doing workshop stuff. It's not like we have packets or worksheets or homework for y'all to do. But what we do have is a little presentation talking about custom figures, making custom toys. I'm sure some of you in this room have probably made some customs or two yourselves. And we're also going to ask you guys some questions about things you would like to see customized in the future, characters that maybe you've wanted to maybe tackle or take on the challenge of. Because one of the cool things about collecting toys is making it your own too. There's all kinds of characters that toy companies just can't get to fast enough for us. We as collectors have really big appetites, and they know it. And they get us as much as they can each year, but really there's only so much they can release in a year. And for a new action figure, usually it's like an 18-month to 2-year lead time. So oftentimes, whenever a figure is revealed, or even pipeline revealed by a company like Hasbro, for example, for just today's panel, because a lot of it's going to be Hasbro subject matter, or examples. Sorry, I was losing my train of thought on that.
That's fine.
Well, we're going to show you how to maybe take that into your own hands and make some of those awesome characters yourself. That's kind of what we've done.
Yeah, and these kind of fall into a couple buckets. We look at repaints, which is kind of the least, I want to say, obstructive in terms of like generating something new from that. Kit bashing, which Kenner and Hasbro has done and continues to do, and then charges for it.
Yep.
And then 3D printing, which is sort of becoming a really new fan favorite medium of getting those characters out, sharing those files online, and getting like the closest to sort of a store-bought version of a character you can get. I want to say there's one other thing, and that's going to be imagination.
Yes.
There's a lot of scenes, like if you look at Jabbas Palace, where they literally had Rodan dressed like Greedo, but wasn't Greedo.
Yep.
And all that takes is just putting that figure there and pretending it's somebody else. So you're just renaming an existing character. So technically, it's a custom figure in that respect.
Yeah, in of itself, you know, you're and you know what, that applies to a lot of other toy lines and collecting in general, where sometimes you'll have a certain character that's not even necessarily like an army builder, but it fits the role of character A or character B from some other subject matter or material, which is actually really, really cool in a sense. And then, what was the next one you had?
Oh, no, that was it.
Oh,
so
okay.
why don't we get right started with it? We're going to start talking about repaints, and that is something
Yes.
Bobby specializes in. And you may have seen him share some of these in the videos he's doing. He'll give you updates on where he is with his B1s. And I personally seen his B1 army. It's a lot.
It is.
It's extensive.
It's ever
and
growing.
he has a lot he hasn't shown. He's got a
Yes.
life-size B1.
Yeah.
He's got some other really large B1s.
Yeah.
And it's not just B1. He's done a lot of different droids. So and other characters as well. So we're going to show you some of those. He's going to give you a little context on him as well.
Absolutely. So what I started with was specifically B1s, really. I played around with custom repaints a little bit off and on over the years when I was in like high school, early college. And then, you know, I just kind of set it aside. I didn't really get into it because I got into my own head. And that's one of the things I want to start with. This is don't get into your own head. If you have the passion for this, if you have the desire to bring a character to life for yourself, so to speak, go for it. Even if you don't think that you're the best painter in the world. I am terrible. My painting is not the greatest. Seriously, far from it. But with each brushstroke, I have a lot. Thank you. With each brushstroke, you know, you learn something new. You learn, oh well, I may have overdone it a little bit on the acrylic. Maybe I need to add a little bit more water, run this paint down a little bit so that it's a little thinner, not too heavy, so that you can fix your coating a little bit. It's all about balance and finding the right mixture for you, and coming up with that look that looks right for you. So one of the first ones that we have to show here is actually one of my more recent ones. This is the new Black Series Destroyer droid on the left to the screen. So the larger one is the new 6-inch one. And you'll notice it kind of looks a little bit more like the one side by side. So the one by it is the Attack of the Clones Destroyer droid from 2002. And I noticed as I've been going on this journey of repainting droids that Hasbro back in the day incorporated some pretty cool detail on their toys, and that is the weathering on the Destroyer droid. So I kind of tried to, in essence, copy what they went for on the Attack of the Clones one, but also make it look a little bit more realistic, a little bit more metallic. So where that copper finish is kind of exposed underneath on the 3 3/4 one, where it looks a little bit more orange, I went with a more full metallic copper look there, and then I just weathered it, sanded it a little to make it look like it was the paint job that actually started out underneath look like the overcoat that has just worn off. That's what I was going for there. And then that little silver line right there in the center, well, that's where the metal heats up the most from the Destroyer droid rolling, because they can roll up to, 40, 45 miles per hour, something like that. They're crazy fast. And metal heats up. And it's crazy to see that Hasbro told that story on that toy as far back as 25 years ago, because that's also a detail on the original Destroyer droid from 1999, which I thought was really cool. So I wanted to capture that. I wanted to recreate that droid for myself, because droids are my favorite part of Star Wars, specifically battle droids. And it started with my love for B1s. So go ahead and go to the next one.
Just real quick on Destroyer droids, as we were talking about this
go
yesterday.
ahead.
No one until this year has produced an accurate rolling Destroyer droid.
Right. And it's actually not even this one, while we're on that subject. The Black Series one only converts most of the way. Unfortunately, there's a little piece of articulation Hasbro missed on the rear leg, so it doesn't quite go all the way. It's supposed to slide forward on a track, and that point is supposed to line up with its head to give it that full roll. And Hot Toys has actually accomplished that with their most recent announcement, which I'm very excited about. So I'm probably going to end up doing a Hot Toys one at some point too.
So this leg, as Bobby is saying, is supposed to fold in and connect up to the nose here.
Yep.
But it just doesn't, because the track that it's on, it doesn't slide down. So the best way you could do it is rotate it up into the back here.
And that's a little bit of customizing you can get into later, which kind of gets into the kit bashing a little bit too, where you remove pieces from one figure and put them on another figure to make them a completely new character in general. People have been doing it since, 77, 78. Since Star Wars came out, people started...
For other lines, maybe longer.
Yeah, people started swapping out limbs from different aliens and creatures to create new rebel forces or new imperial forces or new unique alien characters there in between. Kit bashing is very fun and very popular. But before we get to the kit bashing, go ahead to the next one. So like I was saying, I started with B1s, and it's funny how some figures, the custom can be as simple as finishing it for the toy company that produced it for you. I know that's a weird thing to say, because you paid $20, $25 for a figure, and they said, hey, this is from this source material. But one of the issues I had with this B1, for example, this is the Republic Commando video game B1 from the Gaming Greats Black Series line. The one on the left is the original. That's how it started. And it looks pretty cool. It's an awesome droid. The one on the right, usually the feedback I get is, wow, that's so much more game accurate. That's just a black wash. I just took dirty black paint water, splashed it on there, took my brush, just basted it like I was basting some barbecue ribs, let it dry, gave it that dirty, gritty look, and now it looks like it's right off of the video game screen. So that's a little before and after. And it can range as something as simple as painting a stripe on a character to get you that other character that you saw on screen that you wanted, or painting a little bit of blue on that droid. Go ahead and click next. Or repainting a character altogether, like the Super Battle Droid. So up there is the new Black Series 6-inch scale Super Battle Droid. To the right, to the left is the original. That's how it started. That's the one that comes in the 2-pack with the Battle Droid with C-3PO head. And the one to the right of it is the Camino training Super Battle Droid, because the Camino training droids are some of my favorite droids. And that's not because the clones use them for target practice. I see you back there, Gino. It's because I like that white paint job on them. George said it back before the Phantom Menace even came out, when he showed a model of the B-1 battle droid to his good friend Steve Spielberg. And Steve Spielberg said, "What is that?" And he goes, "That's the new Stormtrooper." And seeing those battle droids in white really helped bridge that gap of battle droid to Stormtrooper for me. And I've always loved the paint job. And the orange targets, I mean, they just kind of look cool on there. So that was one I did for myself, because after I started cranking out different B1 paint jobs, well, obviously the other droid variants had to be next, right? Couldn't leave them out. And that was also one of the more recent ones I've done. I even added a little bit of weathering to look like, he's had some scrapes. He's probably been put together a few more times and sent back out to be shot at by clones. And I'm sure some of them were a little rougher than others because, well, they're clones simulating learning to fight for war. So one of the things you can do when you're making your repaints is have some of your paint effects tell a story. It helps bring that character to life for you just that little bit more. A little scrape here, maybe a blaster mark there, a lightsaber hole if you want it. And next thing you know, this guy's lived through a bunch of different battles, and it's come to life right there before your very eyes, which I think is really cool. Go ahead, next.
While we're on the paint, what is your favorite sort of medium? Like, what have you found have been the most successful? Is it acrylic-based? Is it oil-based? Like an enamel paint? What is working best for you?
For me, it's acrylic-based, because one of the big painting hobbies right now for nerds like us is miniature or model painting or mini painting, whichever you want to call them. So for those of you who might be into tabletop gaming, a good example would be Star Wars Legion. It's much like Warhammer 40K, but Star Wars. You put together your minis, you put together your vehicles, you have a battlefield, and then you face off against somebody else's army. And you can have a range of just different unique clone troopers. Maybe you want to do the 501st, maybe you want to make your own. And acrylic painting, or acrylic paint, is the main paint you would use for something like that. You get your paint, get a couple drops of water in it, give it a good little mix, get a fine point brush, and start going. That's what I do. And so far, it works. Some brushes work better for other things. Sometimes you need a little bit of a wider brush for those bigger parts. Sometimes you need a really thin, teeny tiny brush. And sometimes you can cheat a little bit by picking up a paint pen or two at Walmart. I cheat a little bit sometimes. I'm not ashamed to admit it.
Well, it's part of the story.
It is part of the story. And then sometimes you can add other things like cloth goods. About a little over 2 months ago now, we had Warren Prue out for Order 66 Toys, which is the first official licensed Star Wars toy store. And we've been around since 2010. We have these special guests come out for some of our special Friday Night Live sales. And those are televised all over through Facebook, and Star Wars fans can claim autographs and meet and greet and ask them questions from the comfortability of wherever they're at. It's really cool. Well, Warren played one of the more unique night troopers in the Ahsoka series. But I'm sure many of you have noticed there aren't really a lot of night trooper figures on the market right now. We have a couple coming. We have some coming for the vintage collection. We've got an Army Builder pack, which has 3 unique night troopers and Enoch in 3 3/4 scale, as well as a 2-pack coming out in 6-inch scale, which has Enoch and one of the other night troopers, not this one particular. There's actually, if you look at Ahsoka and you really look hard, you'll start to notice that almost none of them are the same. A lot of those night trooper kits are drastically different between the red ribbons from the night witches, between the gray wear on the plastoid armor and the gold, what do they call it, kintsugi? Something like that.
Something like that, yeah.
Where, it's the Japanese style of repairing something with gold on those cracks and showing those flaws in a new beauty. And that was something that was really cool in Ahsoka. And once we got word that Warren was coming out, well, I had a couple extra Stormtroopers lying around in my Black Series collection that I had set aside to maybe do my own custom Night Troopers, but I hadn't quite gotten there yet because my main focus has been droids. And so each custom that I look at, I kind of look at as like a new challenge, a new way to, like I said, bring these characters to life. I keep saying that a lot. And so I was thinking, well, I've got the paint. How do I want to do the cracks to show the fix? So what I did for that was I took a wood burning kit and I put my thinnest tip on there, because usually they come with different attachments. And this is something you can get cheap at just about any hardware store, Walmart. They're probably like, what, 20, 30
Craft
bucks?
stores, like Michael's has them too. Yeah.
It's something you just plug directly into an outlet. It's a tool that gets a little superheated tip, kind of like the size of a screwdriver.
It's like a soldering iron, but not as hot.
Yeah. And definitely don't touch it. You will burn yourself very badly. I've done it. Just be extra careful. And then I just looked at various images, had to take some pictures of my actual TV and go through the various Ahsoka episodes, which was a lot, actually. And even then, there was only one place I couldn't get a good look at. I know I'm going to get some weird looks for this. Warren's butt. That was the only thing I didn't get a good, clear shot at, was most of his back, but the only detail I missed before I met Warren and presented this to him in person was I didn't paint his butt gray. So luckily on the spot, and this is where the cheating comes in, I had a gray paint pen on hand. So I just filled it in, and then he came by and he said, "Oh, that looks really great." And that one is actually a figure I gifted to him that he takes around his signing tour with him and a few other customs he got. But that one is like 90%, if not higher, the most accurate figure he has of himself, which was pretty exciting. That one's actually one of my favorites. And for the red ribbons, it's not paint. I got some very, very thin ribbon at Walmart in the craft section, and went back to my sources, just took it one piece at a time, like the left shoulder, for example, and I would look at both front, side, and back images, or whatever I had the closest to it, because again, some of these were just weird angles. Some of the images where I could tell it was him in the scene, he's like really far in the background. Some of them, he's just blurry in the background. So it was a little tough to get there, but surprisingly we did. And I would just take a little bit of super glue, start on one spot, wrap it as close as I could to the pattern on screen, and glue the other end, unless it is supposed to hang off a little bit. Then I glued it to a spot to where it could hang off a little bit like it did in the show, and Warren's Night Trooper was brought to life. Go ahead and go to the next one. So now it's time to segue into kit bashing.
Kit bashing, why don't you kick it off?
So I won't take too much more time from Nick on this part because he's got more to say on the kit bashing than I do. Kit bashing is where, like we said earlier, you take the existing pieces of one figure and the existing pieces of another figure or figures, and you mix them together to create something entirely new. This one's kind of a loose one of that, where I used pieces of a anatomy kit for kids. I just bought it in Walmart, where the little science kits and stuff like that are in the toy section, from, Discovery Channel, things of that nature. There was an anatomy set that had a skeleton, and this droid right here is called Mr. Bones. Who here has heard of Mr. Bones? We've got a few hands up in here. Okay, so Mr. Bones is actually a character from a book. And you're probably wondering to yourself, how did I do a character from a book? Well, they've actually done some official art of him, luckily, in a few different sources, some books, some, I think, comics, a video game even. And Mr. Bones is a battle droid that was programmed by Snap Wexley. So Snap Wexley is the Resistance pilot from The Force Awakens and The Rise of Skywalker. He's Poe's best friend.
I think that's Greg Gunbar is the
I think so.
name? Yeah.
In real true life, he's like J.J. Abrams' best friend, which is why he's in all of J.J.'s stuff and why he was responsible for the plane crash of the Lost series, for those of you who got to watch that show. He, as a young man in the Aftermath novel trilogy, made this cool murder droid to take out Imperials and bullies at first, actually, before Imperials, as his own personal best friend and bodyguard. And it's just one of those more niche, popular battle droid type characters, one of the most unique ones for sure. And so when I approached the bone part, I was like, do I take my molding putty that I also use, which is called, quote, green stuff, and it's just like this 2 clay type putty that you mix together, and then after you mix it, you can harden it and shape it into what you want, and once you've set it to that shape, let it sit for a while, and eventually it'll be in that shape pretty much forever. It's great for customizing figures. People mostly use it for miniatures as well, so that's just another extra little cool tool for your tool belt. It's something cheap and easy to use. You can get a bunch of it, by the way, on Amazon. You can get a ton of it. So if you're looking for some, check Amazon, search green stuff, and you'll find that. And I was like, I don't really want to mold bone and then have to paint bone. That sounds kind of complicated and a little tough. So that's when I found that. I took a pair of clippers and just cut the pieces off the skeleton that I thought I wanted, that I thought would work best. And then they're adhered by like this thin black wire based off of the source material I saw. So I got some little black jewelry wire from the jewelry section. And for something thin like that, that's something I recommend. You can get them in a variety of colors, of course. And yeah, it worked out really well.
So I'm going to talk about a couple, maybe. Oh,
you went the wrong way.
So maybe if you don't have a lot of patience to do this, if you don't want to have to craft new material or work with anything like that, there are some ways to do a little bit simplified. So I'm going to go over that here.
Do you have a question?
Yes. You were talking earlier about Star Wars Legion, the role-playing game.
Mm-hmm.
I was at a celebration a couple years back. I think it was in Anaheim. They had a whole table dedicated to anybody who wanted to make a minifigure
Mm-hmm.
and paying to go crazy with it. Where do you recommend we try and buy that stuff? Maybe buy bulk, so a family can sit down and create their whole character. They don't necessarily need to.
That's a good question. Well, luckily, a game like Star Wars Legion, and for those of you who didn't know, the question was, going back to Star Wars Legion, she asked where a good place would be to get minis like that to paint themselves. So there's a few good places like that. For the specifically licensed ones, which would be Legion, you can get them from a variety of retailers like Amazon. It's produced by Atomic Mass Games. I believe we actually have vendor or two here at the con itself, where you can even pick up some of that stuff if you would like to do that while you're here. We also have some Legion tabletop gaming events taking place today in our gaming lounge. If you would like to check that out and ask some of our players and some of our tabletop hosts questions and tips on painting those guys too.
They would be the experts on where to find this stuff in bulk, probably.
That too. As far as bulk, there's local shops around. Search for your local hobby and tabletop gaming shops. I would just search tabletop gaming shop. One of our sponsors, Madness Games and Comics, who are local, they also have a wide selection of Legion, just about all of it. And they are here in Plano, Texas. Well, we're in Allen, but they're right next door in Plano, Texas, maybe 15, 20 minutes from here. And they do lots and lots of that stuff in case you're local. In case you're not local, I would check websites like Amazon or check your home area or closest home city for local tabletop gaming shops, because those are the ones who most consistently carry it. Yes, ma'am. Okay. Madness Games and Comics. Thank you. You're very welcome.
So taking a little simpler approach as well, I'm looking at a couple characters in Jabbas Palace I'm going to be talking to you about. And you're looking at this guy, you're like, where can I buy this guy? Well, this guy is actually two parts assembled here. Now, there was a random Ugnaught in Jabbas Palace. He was wearing these red pajamas, and I thought the closest approximation, and it's not the exact look of it, was the Snaggletooth character from Power of the Jedi. He had a pretty close, essentially red costume. I think the blue throws it off, so I could go the Bobby route and paint that red if I wanted an all red jumpsuit. But he was the right height as an Ugnaught, so I thought that was just absolutely perfect. Basically, what I did from here is I popped his head off, and then I went to, which at the time was the only option, was the Legacy Ugnaught. This is before we had VTC Ugnaughts.
That's a very expensive Ugnaught right now.
This was a long time ago. This is when he was like $10 on the shelf. So
he's not $10 anymore.
I know he's not $10 anymore.
he's not $10 loose anymore.
There are a lot of things I look at that are laying around in my room, and I'm like, I can't believe how much that thing is worth right now. Yeah. But yeah, back when these were only like, I think I actually might have picked them. This is going to make you cringe. I might have picked them up for $4 on clearance when I got him back in the day. So then I combine these two, and then basically you end up with this guy here, which is a very close approximation. And all that was super glue. I didn't have to do anything on painting. I didn't have to do anything on changing him around. So a very easy one. Another one, and this is a very common one. I think a lot of people have made this, and this is Sergeant Dolaran. A lot of people confuse Bane Malnar with Sergeant Dolaran from that Jabba the Hutt Palace scene where Balsh throws him, or Chewie throws him down the steps. Mm-hmm. But it's two different characters. And this is just simply taking the body from Bane Malnar, and you can see a completely different head on this very like 60s-esque domed spaceman helmet. And then I took the head from, it's called Jabba Skiff Guard here in the Black Series, but then they had him Brock Starsher, and I think he was VC 154 maybe when he came out in that 3-pack. But it's basically... It's the same character. He was just wearing blue pajamas when he was in Jabba's palace. So the trick is with this one is the head joints are not the same. So the head joint on Bane is a lot bigger than Brock. So you're going to have to sand it down in order to get the head to pop on there. And I didn't just want to cut it and glue it. I wanted an articulating head because this was a very nice modern body. It had the bendable knees, the arms. I wanted the head to move too. So you grind it down, that head will pop on there easily enough. And you have the character is essentially... I think this is eventually what Hasbro's going to put out when they do it, is a very similar model of taking those pieces and probably kit bashing it.
Very likely. I mean, I'm sure they'll do some painting adjustments just to get it closer to that more movie accurate look, because it's not 100%, but you know that's kind of how kit bashing goes, and some of those painting tips and tricks, when you're kit bashing, sometimes you can just go in with a little paint pen even, or that fine tip brush like I was saying earlier. And these are something cheap you can get anywhere, guys. You can get these at Walmart even, and there's no shame in buying your materials at Walmart because it's cheap and it's easy. A lot of those acrylic paints you see at Walmart, the Applewood or Apple something, I use a lot of those too. It's great for color matching. They're more affordable than, say, Citadel, which is an Army Workshops brand. Citadel is probably going to be some of the best paint you're going to use for either models or custom figures, quality-wise. But honestly, the 50 cents tube at Walmart is also pretty good if you like that too and you're on a budget. There was one other you were talking about a second ago. Oh, yeah, I wanted to comment on your head size compatibility. I had that happen once. We did a custom, because someone requested we do a skiff guard outfit Beckett from Solo, and that was challenging because you would just think, oh, well, I'll just swap the head of Beckett and the hands of Beckett onto the skiff guard Lando figure. No, you won't. No, you won't, because the sizes are drastically different between the head sculpt ball joint that the heads connect on. The way they connect was different between those two figures as well. And the hands, the wrist joints were wider on one of them than the other for some reason. And so sometimes with that kit bashing, if you want to achieve articulation when you have to go through size scaling within joints and stuff, that's where things like the green stuff putty I mentioned earlier can be very useful. One of the tricks I used to get past that hurdle was I took some green stuff, I made a little bead of it, and I shoved it into that wrist joint as much as possible for the one that had to go to the smaller hands, because I think that's what ended up happening. And you take that hand, put it in there, wiggle it around a good amount to where you've got just enough space for it to sit in there, but not enough space where it's going to fall out. Mess with it every so often when you're trying to maintain your articulation, and then later just go in, shave the excess if you have any like excess around the area. Try to paint match if you can, and just color match that with a little bit of paint, a little fine brush, and next thing you know, we had a skiff guard Beckett. I wish I had a picture of that. That would have been cool to show.
That would have been nice to include in the presentation on custom figures.
Yeah, I didn't have a picture of him on hand at the moment.
Last one here is my favorite, and this was also one of the easier ones. Didn't involve any cutting or gluing or anything, just some creativity.
Yep.
And that's Mosep Benid, Jabbas Palace. Mosep Benid in the Jabbas Palace scene was basically just wearing Obi-Wan Jedi robes. So this one took a little bit of creativity. It was the white shirt for me that was a little bit more difficult. So I went all the way back. So I got my Mosep Benid from the Black Series, and they haven't released him since, I don't believe. Only in the Black
that's
Series.
his only figure.
So this is his Cantina look, as you see him in Episode 4, passing for like 5 seconds, I think, in the Cantina. And then I took back from Power of the Force 2 the Obi-Wan white robes, because that was the only thing that exists with those white. Sure, otherwise it's part of the character. It's molded onto him. So this actually came off of the character. You slipped it over the head, so I could just slip it over Mosep Benid's head and get that white undershirt look you could see right there on the screen. And then I wanted a cloth robe, so I went to Obi-Wan from the Legacy Collection, and it's easy enough to just take off and slip on him. And then I end up with this great-looking figure. And they haven't put him out yet in the Jabbas Palace. I hope they do at some point, but that's basically all he was doing, was wearing the Jedi robes, probably recycled costume from Episode 4 or something like that. Fun fact about Mosep Benid, if you read the Marvel comics, he was Jabba the Hutt for a couple years until Lucasfilm came up with Jabba the Hutt for 1983 for Return of the Jedi, and Marvel retconned it. And basically what they said was, he's allowed to represent me as Jabba the Hutt, so he goes by my name. And I'm like, that's great, but when you have people like Han Solo, who knows what he is, referring to him as Jabba the Hutt, it makes no sense. Back then, I guess we didn't complain as much about retconning and story continuity, or maybe they just didn't care, but that was a really funny fact about Mosep Benid, that he was Jabba the Hutt for a few years.
I thought Jabba was that kid with the lightsaber. I'm pretty sure he said his name was Jabba, didn't he?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
Fun fact, speaking of Jabba the Hutt, since we're talking about fun facts, not toy related, but the character Ez Morgan from the Rebels series was actually concept art for Jabba the Hutt. So another one of those cool things, how an unused design just came to life as another character entirely. All right, so now we're on 3D printing.
Yep.
Some people make their own toys from scratch. That's another thing you can do as a custom figure or custom toy maker, custom whatever maker, is either have a 3D printer and 3D print your own stuff from files that you find from some of the creative folks around. If you have the talent to 3D design, you can do that. And it's gotten only easier since the technology has entered the scene. Little by little, we've seen more and more Star Wars fans and Star Wars creative people make all kinds of just cool stuff. Some of these guys just design these 3D models and send them out into the world, and other guys can download them and make them themselves. A friend of mine printed the parts for a 6-inch scale B2 Super Battle Droid for me a little while before Hasbro got around to making it for us. And it's definitely not as good as the Hasbro version. In fact, the Hasbro version blows mine out of the water by so much. What you're looking at here is actually the B2HA, which was one of the things we were able to get away with 3D printing. So his left arm has a rocket firing cannon arm, which is something that is in canon. This one specifically is from the Clone Wars. It's actually from the first episode that our headliner for Rebel ScumCon, Ahmed Best, was in, and it was the first appearance of that droid on screen in canon in a show or a movie. And he's simple. He's solid gray. I've done a couple of others with the 3D printed one before the Black Series came out.
A little touch of red on there.
Little touch of red. Yep, he's got the red indicator light. He's got the black eye slits. And it's not depicted on this image, but on his left shoulder, he also has that little gold B2HA insignia painted on there too. And that's where I know I personally struggle the most is insignias, and everybody's going to have their own challenges and hurdles to get over with customs. But it's also, for me, very therapeutic. I really enjoy the time I take with each and every one of these because it's something that gets my mind off of everything else. Because for me, my whole life is Star Wars, really. It's my professional life. It's my career. And as much as I love what I do, sometimes work is still work, even if it's something you enjoy. And this is one of the things that I do within Star Wars. It's my own little slice that isn't work for in any way, which I really love. Unless someone asks me, "Hey, can you do one for me?" Then that one's work. But for myself, it's never work. It's just love.
Let's say I invest $150 to $300 on a 3D printer. And
Sure.
I take it home, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
Where does one go to find some files?
There are lots of places to find files. You can find files from places like Thingiverse is one of the free file sources you could use. I think there's one or two others as well. But there's also some places where you can just go to buy 3D printed files. I'm actually not a 3D printer. I don't own a 3D printer. I don't know how to 3D print. I assume it's a little bit more to it than just plugging your computer in and clicking print. And there's also different styles of 3D printing. This one, for example, was printed in resin. So there also comes to be different styles of printing. There's PLA, which is the most common, and then there's resin. And the PLA, that's the one where you have those line textures on everything. When you get it printed with resin, it's usually much more smooth. Those details are much more clean. You have to do very little sanding, which is why I like working with resin 3D printed items, which is this case right here, because I didn't actually have to sand the figure before I started. It was already smooth. It already had those details and textures. It's not perfect every single time, though. Sometimes there's a little bit of mess ups and there's a little bit of adjustments you're going to have to do. Maybe you will have to do some sanding. Maybe you'll overcorrect on some of that and accidentally damage the figure, which can turn into a cool new effect or battle damage, or maybe you just don't like it and you scrap it and you start over.
That's part of the journey we were talking about. That is the story. That is the process. That's why you get into it. You learn. You love it. You get a little bit more involved. Another place I want to suggest is Etsy. Etsy does sell a lot of 3D print files, not just for figures, but for props. I have had some props come out of 3D printing from Etsy, and those guys have put a lot of time into those files, and they are pretty awesome for the most part. I mean, always check the reviews to see what people are saying, but they are quite reliable. And again, I'm not a 3D printing expert, but it's as much as downloading a file and executing it through your printer.
Absolutely, and I love Etsy, and you can also just order 3D printed figure kits on Etsy as well. Some of these talented guys and gals, what they do is they will offer you a fully 3D printed whatever it is, and then they mail you the thing, and you take the pieces yourself, and you can start painting and assembling it from there, just like I did here, because this actually was printed in individual pieces, and I had to assemble it and paint it. But it was actually a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Model kits. Model kits are also, Bandai model kits specifically, are also a great source of figure customization, because having those individual pieces, sometimes you can use those to kit bash onto other things.
Exactly.
Or maybe they come with a certain accessory, or maybe you don't want to spend X amount to tear apart an expensive Boba Fett figure, but a $30 Boba Fett model kit, just to get that gauntlet or helmet or the torso even, to make that cool custom Mando that you saw maybe in The Mandalorian or Rebels or the Clone Wars or any other Star Wars source material, Legends or canon or otherwise. And maybe it's your own personal Mandalorian. Another really cool thing we see custom figure people make is, aside from their favorite characters, the characters they bring to life in cosplay form. Like this young man over here in his awesome Jedi robes. Something you could totally do is pick out whatever Jedi figure you think is closest to the robe pattern you have, and then get some dark blue paint. Looks like you've got navy, looking at navy blue over here, and a slightly lighter shade, and next thing you know, you're bringing your character to life. Some people get some good guys to sculpt even their head sculpts. There's lots of cool creative fans out there.
There's a nice booth in there. If you go in there, they'll do a 3D sculpt of you.
Yes.
And all the work will be done.
Shrunk 3D. So if you want your own custom piece, you can get a custom statue of yourself
Speaking of
this
customs.
weekend at Rebel Scum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good segue into that.
Yes.
Yeah. And if you're looking for parts, there's a lot of parts in there from those vendors.
Lots of parts.
Yeah.
Lots. Loose figure lots are a great source of parts. Pieces,
Economic source of
limbs.
parts, yeah.
Oh yeah, whatever you're looking for, accessories, weapons. Keep your eye out for loose figure lots, especially when you're taking on a custom project, especially if it's something you want to do a lot of, like battle droids, for example. I'm always looking for battle droid lots, just in case I can make more, because that's what I like to do. And now we're going to turn it over to you guys and ask a couple of questions, yeah?
We have some questions. We also have a giveaway, so stick around for that for a second.
Yes, we do.
I have a couple samples of the ones we were talking about if you guys want to see them up
Yep,
close.
a couple of kit bashers. So if anybody would like to come up and take a closer look, we have the Mosip Benid kit bash that Nick made. We have
Jabbas Palace in parentheses.
right. I forgot his name.
That's going to be Sergeant DeLaren.
Sergeant
And then I have
our
I don't
Ugnaught.
know the Ugnaughts name. It's Ugnaught Red
Snagglenaught.
Pajamas.
We're
Yeah.
gonna call him Snagglenaught for now.
But let's open up for some questions.
Yes. Any questions? Just raise your hand, and we will repeat the question you asked. Any questions at all about where to maybe find some? Yes, sir.
The first custom that I wanted to do, I think you mentioned one of them.
What was the first custom you did, Nick?
Ooh. It's probably going to be one of these three guys here. It's going to be the Snaggletooth one, just because I did it when the Legacy figure was out. So when was that? 2010?
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's going to be this guy right here when I destroyed a very expensive figure.
Well, right then it was a normal figure.
Yeah.
It's an expensive figure now, relatively.
Yeah.
But back then it was just normal. My first, let's just say for the first of what I'm on now, my first was OOM9 from the Phantom Menace. OOM9. That was kind of what really nudged me. Was Hasbro made one of the coolest versions of the B1 ever with Black Series 6-inch scale. Best articulation, best detail. I mean, they truly nailed it.
Full functionality. That guy tucks all the way down. Yeah.
All the way down. It's awesome. But they also did us dirty in a sense by releasing it with the capability of having the full compact unit on its back, the officer's antenna attachment on its back, or no attachment whatsoever. Because there's a few different variants of B1s out there. And each one has their own function, their own position, what they do. Some of those are marked by a combination of color scheme and physical equipment attached to them or that they're holding in their hands. And as we've gotten through the Black Series line, and Hasbro loves their repaints, and it makes sense. If you can repaint a character without changing anything else and you get a new character out of it, I'm all for it. Even if it is a character or a figure we've had several times, simply because it's an entirely new character we haven't had. And we've never gotten an OOM9. We've never gotten a security B1 battle droid, which is actually the first B1 battle droid we see on screen, not the regular ones, I think. Oh no, we do see the regular ones in the hangar first, actually. The first ones to go and kill Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan were security variants, the red ones. And the other OOM units, the pilots, which have the blue on them. And that's where it started for me, was OOM9, security, and pilot for the regular B1, because simply they released the parts to create those characters, but not in the paint job of those characters, if that makes sense. And after it just kind of bugged me enough and my impatience caught up with me, I just said, you know what? To heck with it. Or as Thanos said, fine, I'll do it myself. And that's why I've done so many figures now, is fine, I'll do it myself since y'all won't. Or simply don't have it, in time for the schedule. And I think that's kind of one of the other drives of why we make custom figures is sometimes the toy companies just take a little too long,
And I think they understand that people are going to want stuff sooner. And that's why they include multiple additional accessories or multiple versions, for example, the B1, to allow you to do that kind of customization. They know, and it's a way to shortcut and meet that demand without too much pressure being on the company and still trying to keep the fan base happy.
Absolutely, which was why it was such a good figure release, because it had that functionality and features, despite my frustration of not having the other paint variants. Even if they could do it like as a 4-pack or something, that'd be actually a cool 4-pack for this year, even. But we got a lot of other cool stuff for this year. We need more TVC for our TVC fans this year.
Hey, the year's still young. We have another big con next month. We'll see what's going to happen.
That is true. SDCC is coming up.
So we have
You ready
any
for
other
giveaway?
questions?
Oh, yes.
Do you usually keep your figures loose, or do you ever put them in card backing and plastic?
Oh, that's a great question. So do we ever keep our figures loose, or do we make custom packaging for our figures? That's actually something a lot of custom fans do. I don't personally make custom packaging for mine. I'm a loosey guy. I got into collecting as a loose collector because I like to play with my toys. But there is a talent and even a market for custom packaged figures, or even custom packaged custom figures entirely. There's actually a couple of layers there. I actually have one in my collection where a guy years ago did a custom of one of my older cosplays. I did a Venomized Mandalorian armor set, and it's pretty sweet. You might be able to find it on my social media somewhere. It's buried, but I did the Venom teeth in the inner cheek of the helmet, and then coming from the back of the inner cheek, I drew a big red swirly tongue on it. And this guy not only nailed that, but even took it upon himself to make a custom Black Series box with Venom and all this other cool stuff on it too. I wish I had a picture of that too. Because that was from years and years ago, and it's hanging on my wall at home. But yeah, that's something, that is definitely something people do.
I would say for me, it's necessity is the mother of invention. So I only create these characters because I find a need for them in a display. So I want them out on the shelf. I want them in part of that scene. I want them filling my Jabbas Palace. I want them in my cantina. Really looking forward to that, by the way. So
Yes.
I need them on display. So I'm not going to put them on card back. So for me, it's more like I'm going to the trouble of making something because I have a reason to have it. Is for sort of filling that need.
And then on the other hand, though, but for those who have that desire, vintage collection and the original vintage line are very popular and nostalgic among Star Wars fans. And that classic Kenner cardback design has so many missing Star Wars characters on it. So you will often see figures custom packaged as well that are just normal figures that have been released in the line, but they're on that Kenner style card back. Momo Nadon's a good example of that. I've seen a lot of people take the Power of the Force 2 Momo Nadon figure or the Saga Collection 06, which is the current best one until the VC one comes out, on a Kenner style card back that they either designed and had printed by a nice printer or designed and printed themselves, and then they took a plastic bubble that you could get at like a craft shop, because you can get those kind of things at craft shops too, put a little bit of glue on there and then just glue it like Kenner would have done back in the day. Yeah.
All right. I want to make sure we have time for our giveaway before the next panel starts.
Sure thing.
So from our friends at Diamond Select Toys.
And
we
Gentle
have-
Giant Ltd.
And Gentle Giant Ltd. We have an amazing 000, as I like to call him, the murder droid, from the Dr. Aphra series as a giveaway here. And I think we could keep it simple. Who knows what the designation is of his counterpart?
Ooh, and specifically we mean his droid,
droid
partner,
partner.
his
His
R2D2,
Yeah.
so to speak. Does anybody know? Show if you know, raise your hand.
Well, if you do, raise your hand.
If you know, raise your hand. Nobody?
Oh,
Nobody? Okay.
I was hoping that was easy.
So to be fair, this is a comic book character.
Yeah. It's
Okay.
also really close in name to one of Bobby's favorite droids.
Yes, it is.
There's just one additional letter, actually.
Yeah,
But, I got a hand.
that
Yeah,
is correct.
That is correct.
So the counterpart droid, and while we said he's a counterpart like R2D2, BT-1 is not an astromech. He is classified as what's called a blastomech. And I know that name sounds very silly, but it's exactly what you think it is. It's an astromech with really big guns attached to it. He's very cool. Surprisingly, they have not done one yet, but I'm hoping real soon that we do get
The jumbo?
the jumbo
That might be
blastromech
coming,
because
yeah.
I'm sure it would be a partial of the Kenner R5 that they did.
We would, and I think this is perfect for this because I did a review of this figure. It is a kit bash. Essentially, they took the body. I think it was the break apart limbs C-3PO.
Yep.
They added newly molded arms to it, and they just repainted the head and the
Yep.
body, and then that's basically it. So, perfect example for this
Yep.
panel.
Even
Bashing.
toy companies do it, and you can too. And hopefully, we gave you guys some cool ideas on how to maybe accomplish some of these cool customs that you can do yourself, really anywhere. Some of the team members, in fact, Vinny is working on some custom characters. Hopefully he'll be able to get them done in time. For some of the special guests that we have in our signer room, he's trying to do some of the Shriekhawk Mandos from Season 3 of The Mandalorian. We had Roy Ross and Daniel Romero, who do not have announced figures coming yet. Lisa Gabe, the other Shriekhawk Mando that we have here, does actually have a figure coming soon. It just got announced, and it's up for pre-order by Hasbro in 6-inch scale. Along with the Shriekhawk Mando, Paul Darnell, who is also here and played Marok in Ahsoka. He's got his Shriekhawk Mando coming out too. So we have 2 figures out of our 4 Shriekhawk Mandos here, and somebody working on 1 or 2 customs to fill in the other gaps for their own personal collection, which it's funny how some of us just do it right there on the spot, and that guy's not even in this room right now. So we are out of time, and congratulations to you on winning the 000 from Diamond Select and Gentle Giant Ltd. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming to our customs panel. We hope you had fun.
Thank you.
And stay tuned. We have another exciting panel in this room right now.
Bobby, what is your...
Jawa in about an hour, and that's by Chris Talbot of the 501st. So
Bobby,
if you want,
what is your next panel?
my next panel is Collector's Oracle in the main panel room, where we're going to be talking about our free archival website to help you keep track of your collection, and maybe even a new announcement about it.
And I'll be back in this room tomorrow for an episode of Rebel Scum Rewind.
That's right.